John. I'm 42 years old. My sobriety date is 3/14/18, and I am an addict. I first started taking opiates in 2007. I was working at Circuit City, and I went to lift up a pretty heavy subwoofer that was magnetized to the back of the tailgate. I immediately pulled a nerve, hit my knees, ambulance was called. Once I was taken to the emergency room, they had given me a pretty heavy dose, or what at the time I thought was a heavy dose of opiates. And from there, it kind of gave me a feeling that I've never felt before. It was like the feeling you get when you describe and talk about like your best friend, that joy, that good feeling, that pleasurable feeling is what I felt when I took opiates. Now, I may have taken them prior in the future, I just never really realized that it gave me that effect. But that was probably the most memorable effect that I've had when taking them. And it didn't really affect me too much mentally at the time, but over the course of the years, over the course of the months, it became the chase of how can I get that? What meds were they? How can I achieve them? How much were they? And that was how it originally started, and it escalated over 8 to 10 years into a full-blown addiction. And that's kind of the starting point to how I ended up in the situation that I was in, which was an absolute full-blown homeless addict shooting heroin in the very same spot that I'm recording this. But over those 8 to 10 years, it was, how can I lie? How can I cheat? How can I steal? How can I become better at it? How do I become a better manipulator? And as all of those progressed and I got better at all of that, little did I know that it was taking such a huge impact on my life, my son, my family members, my careers. I ended up selling a business. I couldn't keep a job because I was spending so much of the money that I was earning on buying bottles of Percocet. And it became a point where I was spending $200 to $300 a day on Percocet, and that's where the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the manipulation comes from. If I had a job, my first thought was, what can I steal? How fast can I steal it? And will I get away with it? And I was pretty good at it. Like I said, I got really good at that, but it was taking such a heavy toll on everything else. Even my health was declining fast because I couldn't keep up with the tolerance of opiates that I was building up into my system. I've actually shot dope in this exact spot, this little area that I'm recording this documentary about addiction 1,000 times. I've always been a pretty likable person. I've always been the center of, I don't want to say the center of attention, but I was always kind of the life of the party, the happy, bubbly. Everybody kind of wanted to talk to me and hang out with me, and I was always kind of the louder one. And I noticed that as my addiction progressed, I became, I don't want to say less popular, but like I noticed that my friends started, and friends and family started to withdraw from me. I would get less phone calls, less invites. My two closest friends at the time, I would go a couple weeks without hearing from them. I'd call, I wouldn't get a return phone call. It slowly started with some of my family members as well. I think they started to notice there was something wrong. It's just nothing could be identified on what it was. And that's probably the first time I started to realize that something was changing in me. And little did I know at the time that was the start of what was going to become a full-blown opiate addiction. And I didn't realize that it was going to take me to bottoms that you can't even fathom. A normal human being can't put together what it's like to actually be in the position that this chemical was going to take me to. One of the most memorable stories that I can tell you is an absolute low. I've never felt more low at this point in my life. This is, again, the most impactful moment of my homeless experience. I was about a year and a half into being homeless at this point. No car, no job, no nothing. Living dumpster to dumpster, shot to shot. Every morning it was, what can I get to feel better? And one night I had picked up, and I was trying to find a place to use, and I had sores all over my body, from my shins to my knees to my elbows to my hips, all across my forehead. Open, pussy lesions of bad drug, or what I thought was MRSA at the time. And I came across an enclosed dumpster with a seat from a Honda Prelude in it. I figured, oh, what a better place. So that morning, waking up, I could feel the sun hitting my knee. My eyes were not open yet. My knee was being hit by the sun, and I could feel it traveling down my leg up to my hips. So I started to open my eyes, and I looked down, and I was covered from knee to toe with ants eating my pussy lesions all over me. I did have them on my arms and on my chest and kind of on my head, but the majority of them was from like my mid thighs down. And I'm talking 200,000-400,000 ants. And I looked down, and I couldn't imagine being in a position where I'm virtually being eaten alive by ants. I mean, they were everywhere. I couldn't shake them off. But that situation impacted me so bad that a week later, or a couple months later, whatever it was, I got arrested. I actually got a tattoo in jail of an ant on my arm, or my hand, so I can look down and never forget that moment. When I originally started to find a more reliable source for pills, when I first started, it started out, I would buy a bottle for $20 or $30, and it would last me 4 or 5 days. And over the course of time, that gradually starts to go up as it does the tolerance. So it started about $25 to $35 a bottle, up into 50, 60, 70 a week, to 100, 150 a week, because I was buying a little bit stronger. So as I was buying stronger meds, my tolerance was going up. And over the course of a slow course of about 2 years, I got up into about, I don't know, 100, 150, $200. It basically capped at about $250 to $300 a day, just to keep me from becoming dope sick and being able to function. I needed to be able to take a certain amount of opiates to where I could function and become a normal, average, working human being, and not nod out or fall asleep. But I needed to take enough to where I wouldn't get sick. I remember doing the transition from pills to heroin. It was a no-brainer. I had originally walked in, and I smelt it and I saw it, and I immediately was like, no, I'm not doing that. And the person that I was buying it from said, do you realize how much this costs? And I said, no, I don't. I have no idea. And he goes, this piece right here is about $20, and it'll last you about 3 days. before I actually ingested it, I had already made the decision that's what I was going to do because of how much money I was going to save and how much more I could buy and how long I could make it last, and it would greatly increase my high. Started out $20 to $30 every 2 to 3 days, turned into $50 a week, $75 a week. It probably capped once I started doing heroin and meth. I was probably, in this whole time, I was still trying to maintain a job, trying to maintain manipulating family members, stealing what small items I could get to pay for my drugs or to trade to my dealer for the drug, to losing everything I had to becoming homeless. It dropped from about $150 to about $75 to $100 a day. I mean, I still maintain that daily. So every morning I would have to wake up from the back of my dirty dumpster to go fly a sign on the street corner to make increments of $25 to $30 to get me by for about 3 hours. So it was about $20 every 3 to 4 hours to keep me from getting sick. And at this point, my family knew that there was something along the lines of an addiction base. I think my mom knew it had something to do with pills, but I think she kept it, fairly quiet for whatever reason that was. I'm not sure. None of my family really knew what was going on. They just kind of had thoughts and doubts about what was going on in my life because it was so up and down, and so many lies were told to obtain money for my addiction that me and my son went to Montana one year, and I had smuggled 3 grams of heroin on my body onto the plane with the mindset that I have to make 3 grams of heroin last close to 7 days so I wouldn't get sick in Montana. Because when you struggle with opiate addiction, you can't go outside of the city limits with the fear of getting sick, not knowing where your next fix is going to come from, where you need to have such a stockpile of it that where you get to where you're going, you don't get sick. Because when you get sick and you go down from an opiate withdrawal, you're down, you're done, you're not moving. Nothing is going to get you out of bed. So when I got to Montana with my 3 grams of heroin, I told myself this has to last almost 7 days until I get back. I already had my dealer lined up from the night I got back. He was going to pick me up at the airport. 2 days, or not, the night of the second day is when I think I smoked the last of the 3rd gram that I had, and I had a whole bottle of Tramadol that I knew that I could have I could have fell back on, but Tramadol doesn't take the cravings away. It just kind of makes you feel a little bit better. You can get by with it, but it's not a viable source of replacement. I was taking handfuls of these, 10, 15, 20 at a time, 3 days, or 3 times a day. And I remember we were going out on the boat to go fishing, me, my son, my mom, and my stepdad. My mom asked me in the morning, she goes, "Hey, is everything okay?" And I kind of looked at her and I said, "Yeah, everything's great. I feel fine." She goes, "Okay." So we go on the boat, we fish for a couple hours, and then we decide we're going to go home and have lunch or whatever we were going to do. And like I said, I don't think my family knew to what degree this addiction had its grasps into my life. And I've never reached out for help or asked them. So as me and my son and my mom are walking to the SUV to get the truck and the boat launched, the boat ramp, I get in the car and I go into a full-blown locked up seizure, not remembering anything. I just remember getting in the car and waking up in the garage, standing in front of my family and the Montana sheriff who lived right across the street. And then I think from that moment, it really, really set in deep when I was sitting in the hospital that my family know that this is not just a pill problem. This is a full-blown heroin addiction. And that's when it became very real, very clear to my family. And that's also when they started to cut me off. They wouldn't answer my phone calls. They wouldn't return my phone calls. They were very concerned about me and where I was, what I was doing, but they knew any phone call they picked up would be a lie, a manipulation to try to get money. My mom had flown out after that, got a hotel room, invited me over for breakfast. I thought it was awesome. And she sat me down and she told me, do not come to Christmas this year. If you show up at my door, I will not let you in. You are not wanted. And that just took a big toll on me. It just ripped me apart inside. So naturally, my thought process was to use more, use harder, go harder. And I was to the point where I was so homeless and so suicidal, and my addiction has taken everything from me, that all I wanted to do was just crawl behind a dumpster and shoot a big shot of heroin and die. That's where it took me. This tunnel was a tunnel that I actually called my home for months and months and months. There were a few other places that I slept nightly, but this was my go-to, my home. I lived here, ate here, slept here. There's a spigot right outside the tunnel where I showered, maybe once a month, maybe twice a month, depending on how it worked and how it looked for me. Shortly after the little 5 months-ish, I got arrested shortly outside this tunnel. A few months after that, probably 4 or 5 months. And I had 2 warrants for my arrest, so I knew when the cops showed up I was for surely going to go to jail. After getting to jail, I knew that I was going to be there for a while. I sat in Durango for 5 or 6 days before I actually got to see a judge. The judge told me that I was going to do 6 months in county jail with a 30-day potential early release for something called reach out. What reach out was is they pull you out a month early and they stick you in rehab. So when I got into jail, I was probably a month and a half sober, free from every chemical, like actually sober. And I think what really opened my eyes was when the drugs hit the jail, I did everything I could to get it. And that's when that little light bulb came on, even to myself, and I knew that I think this addiction is a lot stronger than I anticipated it to be. I always figured I can stop when I want to stop. I wasn't that homeless. I kept thinking that my rock bottom was not rock bottom, when in fact I've had multiple overdoses. I've overdosed people in this tunnel. I never knew that it was as bad as I made it out to be, but the reality of it, it was 10 times worse. Through the course of being incarcerated in county, I used 5 or 6 times, any time that I could get a hold of it. And when I found out that I was eligible for early release 5 months after being arrested, I got to the rehab center that they chose, and I decided that this is really going to have to change. Something is going to have to absolutely work. That I'm going to have to put in a lot of effort, because I wanted this change. I wanted to be sober. I wanted to build the relationship back up with my son. I know through the addiction that I've hurt a lot of people, especially all of my family members, but I think the most impactful was my son. I hurt him the most, and I don't know if at the time he really knew about it until he was told that I was, a drug addict and in and out of jail and homeless, and I think that's when the reality really set in for him. So I really wanted to change myself and to be what I knew my son wanted, was a loving, caring, honest, healthy, alive father. So with a lot of work, I did my sponsorship. I did my 12 steps twice. I transitioned into a volunteer position with the rehab center that I worked at. About 3 months later, I got hired on as full-time, and I still currently have that job. It's been 2 years, so almost 13 days short of 2 years. And I have made my amends. I've made financial amends. I have been an honest, caring, loving father to my son. I see him almost every single weekend. I have absolutely fought the demons along the way, but I want my sobriety, and I will stop at nothing to continue my sobriety. This has been the most educational challenge that I have ever endured, and I am so blessed to be in a position that I'm in right now. I've got a full-time job. I have the love and the trust and the support of every one of my family members. I have a beautiful girlfriend. I live in an apartment. I shower daily. I have money in my pocket. I have stability. I was laying in jail one night looking up at all the pictures that I ripped out of magazines of motorcycles, saying when I get out of here, I'm going to get sober and I'm going to buy a motorcycle. And today I can check that box. I ride every single day. I own my own motorcycle. I do and live the life that I want to live nowadays, and I have the power of choice. I know there's two directions, the forward direction and backwards direction. I'm not going to go backwards. The reality of this world and how bad opiates and fentanyl and meth has become is truly terrifying to me. And as I make the efforts to stay sober, I visit some of the places that I used and I lived, or I see some of the people that I used to run with, sometimes on a weekly basis. It truly, truly hurts to know that they're still out there, but I'm glad that they're still alive, and I hope that one day that they would be put in a similar situation that I've been put in, and hopefully one day turn their lives around. My name is John, and I am an addict. Thank you for watching.